Spring is in the air, which means now is the time to save during spring outdoor power deals at the Home Depot. Make cleanup easier when you go cordless with the Milwaukee M18 string trimmer, designed to deliver more runtime, more speed, and maximum performance. Then grab a select Milwaukee fuel attachment, like the pole saw, edger, or brush cutter, included at no extra cost when you buy the Milwaukee M18 string trimmer. Shop 7 days of spring outdoor power deals at the Home Depot, now through April 29th.
Star Wars is back on the big screen with The Mandalorian and Grogu.
Gangsters, war criminals. I'll take out every bad guy in your deck of cards.
On May 22nd, feel the Force on the biggest screen possible.
The old protect the young, and the young protect the old. This is the way.
Buckle up.
Always wear your seatbelt.
The Mandalorian and Grogu, rated PG-13, may be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters May 22nd. Get tickets now.
Focus on the things that we have direct control over, especially in this day and age. Because of social media, and especially playing in a higher division, there is a lot of meaningless noise. But I really do enjoy that challenge of trying to teach people to focus on the things that they can control and just keep your nose down and just worry about stacking days and being the best that you can be.
This is the Turnaround Series presented by the Coach and Coordinator Network. At the Coach and Coordinator Network, we're connecting coaches to the ideas, systems, and resources that help programs improve. You'll hear about 2 of those platforms today, and both can be instrumental in turning your program around. Because when you're building a program, hard work matters, but so do the right ideas, the right plan, and access to coaches who have done it before. That is what this series is built to deliver. Hosted by Michael Echaves, the Turnaround Series breaks down the leadership, culture, and football decisions that drive real change inside a program. Let's get into it.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Today, we're excited to have Coach Steinberg on the Turnaround podcast. My name is Michael Echaves, head coach at Troy High School in Southern California, and I am graced with the privilege of hosting the series through the Coach and Coordinator podcast. Coach Steinberg has led several amazing turnarounds. First, at Burroughs High School, Coach Steinberg inherited a solid program, and within 8 seasons, he led them to a CF championship. He then had the opportunity to move to A.B. Miller, a larger school in Fontana, California. His first season, he amassed a 4-6 record, and then very quickly turned it around and went on to accumulate 21 wins in only 2 seasons after that. After his success there, a larger school came calling, Corona Santiago. And in Corona Santiago, he played in one of the best public school leagues in Southern California. After that, he had the opportunity to move to Rancho Verde. He led that program to a CF championship after only 3 years and 2 semifinal appearances just before that. In 2018, after winning a CF title, Coach was hired in his hometown, Beaumont. The program was experiencing some success, but nothing consistent. Over these last several years, Coach has built the Cougars into one of the most well-respected and feared programs in Southern California. Coach Steinberg, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. What a pleasure it is for me to be on your podcast. I love listening to you guys.
Awesome. Coach, we're going to start off with Burroughs. What was the overall culture and mindset of the team when you arrived?
Probably similar to a lot of programs that are hovering around just mediocrity, as, just the standards I felt were fairly low in the program, and the athletes were pushed, and no fault of theirs. It was, kind of a program that just had no stability in terms of a coach in the recent years. Before that, there was no coach that had been there for a lengthy period of time. So there was nothing really established at that time. And like a lot of people just, what do most people do when they're not pushed is they just hover around their comfort zone.
Yep. So, Coach, you had your offensive system, I know, is a key and critical part of your turnaround formula. I know obviously this is earlier in your career. Was your offensive system refined at that time to kind of propel you, or were you still kind of working out the kinks? And if so, what other strategies did you use to turn that program around?
So the philosophy probably hasn't changed that much in terms of spreading the ball around, getting the ball out in space. The offense has evolved a lot, like probably no different than, many other offenses is like you've kind of have to keep up with the times and there's things that you have to do because defenses evolve. So it probably looks a little different now than it did back then, even though we were, spread no huddle. I think that one of the things that we were really fortunate with in terms of being at Burroughs High School is we had a very young staff. All of us were fairly newly married. None of us had kids. And there was a core group of guys that we stuck together for the 8 years. And so what do? You get together on the weekends. You go to clinics in the off season. Your family spent, you and your wives all get together. So it was always centered around just getting together, talking football, growing, and they all shared my philosophy in terms of how we're gonna develop a program, what the vision is, and how we're gonna work with. I think that probably more important than the offense that we ran at the time or the defense was just raising standards and just getting the best out of the athletes that were in the program and pushing them so that they can see that they could break through maybe their self-imposed limits that they had and start to have a vision of seeing themselves better than they were at the time.
Yes, Coach, speak to really the staff unity. I know, what I've heard a lot of coaches talk about is the staff unity is so critical to the success of the program. Can you give me one or two, I guess, immediate effects of having that staff unity that it had on your team at Burroughs? How did you see that actually play out in the day to day of your boys?
So there's three things in hiring a coach that I think are really important. Like number one, they have to just be beyond passionate about working with high school athletes. And more than just the athletic part is understanding that just the world that they live in and the challenges that they have in living this in our world. So that's like number one. Number two is incredibly loyal to myself and the program and understanding what our overall vision is. So, just a shared vision. And then three is just being pretty good at coaching and not just being complacent. And I think when you have a coach that has those three things and they stick around, success is going to happen. It's going to be a byproduct of what you do. So the great thing about just having coaches over a period of time and not having a revolving door of guys coming and going and having that core group is they understand the system. So you don't have to constantly meet to, just for the sake of meeting, I guess. They know what your vision is. So you're not having to teach somebody new all the time. And it's just easy to be efficient in just meeting time for them to be working with kids. You could just get to work. When you bring somebody new on staff, even if they check all those boxes that I said, the three things, you have to spend time meeting and growing together and laying out the plan and then understanding the logistics and how the week works and what happens at any given point in the year. And when guys have either played for you or been on staff or that you've coached with before, it's easy to just kind of, okay, let's get moving here. At Beaumont, for instance, like we're now at the point where most of our staff has been together. And I also am now at the point where I've got some really key guys on our staff. I call them our future varsity coaches, our freshman guys. Lots of them have played for me that are in our program. So they know what the vision is. They know how the programs run. They know what the offensive and defensive schemes are. So, and they're just great at working with kids. So it makes things a lot easier.
That's so excellent. I realized something as you were talking, and you had talked about when you are familiar with each other, you really can kind of step into practice. And there's not a lot of, you still have to prep and you still have to dialogue, but it's not a lot how you're talking about when you get a new staff and you have to coach the coaches and reintroduce the values and always hammer that. You kind of are able to really delve deep into relationships with your coaches. And I think that is something that for me, like that's precious to me when I get to hang out with some of the guys that I really love and admire and respect. That only is going to matriculate to the rest of the program, and I think that's a key thing that you hit there, which I really love.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to have coaches on your staff that not only are really good at what they do, but guys that you can get along with. You know what I mean? That like now your friends in the off season. Now we're all at different points in our life where we have kids and we're busy and stuff, but I consider the guys that are on our staff like great friends. It's hard to work with people when you're miserable. And I hear about guys on other staffs. And I think I don't pull this stuff just out of a hat, like come up with these things that, hey, they need to have these 3 things if they're going to be on staff. There's a good chance if I've come up with something that at some point earlier, I've had some challenges and I don't want to have them. So, we did have challenges at different points in my career with guys. But one of the things I'm probably really, really proud of is I've had very few times that we've had to fire guys for just not being good coaches.
Yeah, that's excellent. Coach, let's talk about recruitment in the sense of recruiting the hallways and getting guys that were on campus to buy into your program and kind of talent acquisition. At Burroughs, did you feel like you guys on campus had to do a lot of legwork to get kids to come out to football, or was it like the talent was there, you guys just had to form it? Which one was it, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so that's a great question because the first few years that I was at Burroughs is all we talked about was players on the other team. I wish I had that guy. Or I actually remember our first year. It was our first game, and they just had this incredible running back. And I said, thank gosh we'll never see him again. The next week had a better running back. And it seemed like every week the team would one up from the week before of the back that they had. And then the next year we were talking about other kids. And finally, I got to the point where we got to stop this. We got to just focus on the kids that we have because we're in a community. None of those kids are coming here. So let's focus on the kids that we have. So I felt like at that point we worked a little more and we were more intentional on developing our own talent and not worrying about what we didn't have. Let's build our systems around the kids that we have. We hit the hallways hard. And we got kids that came out, their junior year and with more freshmen coming out. And I felt like at that point when we started really pouring more into our own kids is like things started to really turn around.
I love that. In my experience at Troy, we kind of had that same feeling. It was like we were looking at the opponents like, gosh, when do we get these kids? And there was kind of a point where we just said, all right, like our kids are our kids. Like we have to adapt, we have to adjust to them, and we have to pour into them and develop them. And I think that is such wisdom as you're taking over a program and as you're, looking at your team. And sometimes it is depressing because you don't have the guys yet and you have to go build them.
For sure. And even like now, the last few years playing in Division II and the last probably 5 years playing in the higher divisions, I think that it's important to just focus on your program, create a program that everybody wants to be a part of. And so at Beaumont, like we have really high numbers in our football program. Kids want it. It's not for everybody, but we make sure that the kids that are in our program, we create a program, something that they're going to be proud of and that they enjoy playing.
I love that. Coach, you are huge on development. I see all of the stuff that you guys do in the weight room and in the speed. How do you think that lent itself to the success you had at Burroughs?
Huge. So at Burroughs, we had some kids that ran track, but we had some basketball players, a couple kids that played baseball. Some kids would do track. I didn't feel like it was a large number for any of the sports where we had multi-sport athletes. But one of the things that we did in the off season is I always believe that it's important. Let's build the athlete first and then position second. So we saw them more as athletes than just football players. So a lot of the stuff that we did at the time, we got into the bigger, faster, stronger program, which was big at the time. And then we would do circuits too throughout the week in the off season where we were working on just building them as becoming more explosive and faster. And that part was probably built more on the Nebraska program. And I found that that really helped a lot. And then as I moved to bigger schools, when I got to A.B. Miller, I helped I helped a little bit in terms of just getting more football players to run track. So I had a deal where they would go to the football period, sixth period, and they would do their weights and stuff, and then I would get them out from there to come out and do their sprints and stuff. And we had a lot of kids that were involved in track program there, and that's probably where I saw the benefit of kids playing multi-sport. And it's crazy. You just kind of look at nowadays how coaches are just so tight about keeping their kids, and I've always felt like, I want kids to have an experience doing other sports as well. And it's a win-win situation, especially if they're going to track or if they're playing basketball, not just from the athletic point of view, but just from being on a team, competing year round, and getting coached up by a coach.
Yep. I say if I can just lift my guys 3 days a week, I don't care what sport they do. Like I would love to speed train them too, but that's not important at this point. It's like, let me just lift them 2 to 3 times a week, and then you go take them and do your other sports. I think if we all adopt the mentality, we'd be in such a better state just with high school athletics.
Totally agree with you on that.
Okay, coach, so you mentioned AB Miller. All right, so we're going to transition there. Well, you know what? Actually, before I do, coach, let's touch on the CIF championship at Burroughs. So it took 8 years to get that title. And, was there a moment where you felt like, you know what, coach, we did something that really kind of elevated our program? Or was it a slow build and just a culmination of lots of work? Which one was it? Was there
lots of work, but I felt like we just were able to tap into our players' psyche. I really felt like by year 4, we really felt like we had kids that played way above themselves. They just thought they were a real bad group of kids. And I mean that like tough.
Yeah.
And they were. And as a matter of fact, year 6, we played in a CIF championship and lost to Kaiser High School, who was a powerhouse at the time. I felt like year 7 was probably our best team that we had athletically when I was there. I blew it. We lost in the semifinals, I think. We lost in the semifinals. I felt like it was more on me than our kids. We had the kids to win it all that year. And then year 8, we just put it all together and got back to the championship game again and won. We had some pretty talented kids, and we had some characters too. And we just had a lot of fun.
I think what you said, coach, and kudos to you, multi-CIF championship coach, you put the blame of that. I think you said it was that 7th season on you. I don't see many coaches saying we had this team and it's my fault, and I think that is what makes great coaches. Unfortunately, sometimes you get to that point and you're like, I have this amazing team, but I'm not ready yet, to take them to that next level. And that's great.
Yeah, I've got great memories from my time at Burroughs, and I really felt like it was just the perfect storm in terms of having an opportunity to develop as a young coach and having an administration that was super supportive and terrific community, one high school town, and just the time that we were in and everything. It was just awesome.
Coach, was George Wilson with you at Burroughs?
George was with us, I believe, Yeah, George was with us and he was on our staff. Then I coached track that year. I was the head track coach as well. So I had all the football coaches coach track. And George was our distance coach. And he ran his distance workouts like a football practice. He was pretty demanding. We had a lot of fun. George coaching track is probably the reason of how he wound up at Rancho Verde. Because we went down to Rancho Verde for the Inland Empire meet. We took all of our kids, and Pete Duffy, who was the head coach at Rancho Verde at the time, who became a good friend, Pete Duffy sold George Wilson on coming to Rancho Verde, told him he'd get him a job there. And that was during the track meet. And sure enough, after that season, George winds up on Pete's staff, and George was a key guy on that staff for a number of years, running the defense. And then George wound up getting the job he goes down and gets the job at Marietta Valley.
Yep, and he's done a phenomenal job. But
terrific job.
I overheard you guys talking at the Chargers game and was just so interested and intrigued by that.
George stayed with us for a while. He was a great guy. I had a lot of fun with him.
Love it. Coach, let's now transition to AB Miller. So you get there, first year you go 4-6. Obviously getting wins in a struggling program is amazing. And then you just rattle off 2 of these amazing seasons. Coach, tell me about that. What was the program like as you walked into it, and how did you flip it?
just being at Burroughs, we would go down to AB Miller in the off season. They'd have lifting meets were big back then. Late 90s, early 2000s, everybody was going to lifting meets in the off season. So we would take our kids down there, and I thought, my gosh, there's some studs here at this school. Some really athletic, strong kids. And I always felt like they were a sleeping giant. John Tyree was the coach, and it was the tail end of his career. And I felt just, follow them in the paper and read, and just, I just felt like they had some kids. I mean, it was pretty large school at the time too. And so the superintendent from Sierra Sands, Ridgecrest, Burroughs High School, goes down and he becomes a superintendent in Fontana. And anyways, he told me that John was going to be leaving, and if I wanted that job, I'd be able to take it over. So I moved down there in April, and there was just a lot of, again, just mediocrity. Kind of felt like things needed to be tightened up, and it took us a season to tighten things up. It was just a great learning experience for me that first year, in terms of, you can't assume that just because you're running a system in one place that you're going to just pluck it in and the kids are going to learn it at the other place. I learned how to simplify our play calling and our how we call things offensively, play names, concepts, things like that. And so it was a little bit of a learning curve for me that first year, having to redo some things offensively, not change the concepts as much as is how we teach it. And then we just kind of went on a roll the next 2 years and really maximized the potential that we had there.
Yeah, Coach. Now you're going into this place where, you had just mentioned that average was the standard, and then you raise it, you elevate it. Did you get a lot of pushback from the players? Did you get a lot of pushback from the community? How did you handle that? That's one thing I think that's so hard about turnaround.
Community was super supportive. I think they appreciated that we were going in and raising the bar. So the very first one was academics. When I took over the program, I forget what the total number of kids returning was. Most of them, if we had started the season in April, most of them would have been ineligible. So the very first thing that I did is, as I was hiring coaches, is I hired a teacher on staff at the school, and we made him, Mr. Brashak, we made him the academic coach. And so if you had a certain GPA that was, hovering around a 2.0 or lower, you had to go for study hall in the mornings with him. Or you could not come out for workouts, sixth period, or if we were going to be on the field at some point, you weren't going to be able to come out for spring ball either. I spent a good portion of my time on the phone with parents, talking to them about their son's grade point average and how we had to raise it and getting their support. So we had buy-in from the parents. And I think I really felt like the players really appreciated that somebody cared and was there to push them. It just took us a little bit of time that first year to get that off season going into that first year, and that first year to raise our standard. So the underclassmen really took a hold of that and loved it.
Yeah. Coach, you spoke about kind of the mentality that you guys, the sports psychology or mental coaching that you guys had really instituted at Burroughs. Did you have, I guess, any success with that, translating it to Fontana, and did you see that pay off?
One of the things that I think that it's like, as coaches, what do? We see greatness in kids that may not see it in themselves, right? So, and coaches we build people up for the most part. That is my approach. Is I try to be as positive as possible. I don't think that you need to constantly yell. I know obviously there's times that we do it as coaches, but I always come from a perspective is I want to build this young man up. I want to see things in him that he may not see in himself. And I need to sell that vision to him of where he could be. And I think when you do that, when you raise the bar and you raise the standards, like, people will generally meet you at whatever your expectations are, right? So maybe the expectations were a little low before me. And so I come in and our staff raises those expectations. And then again, I think that people are generally going to meet you there where you see them.
Yeah. I think it's critical as well that you highlighted that, you can raise those standards, but you as a professional have to be ready to teach them to that standard too. And I know you take a lot of pride in that.
For sure, yeah.
Coach, let's talk about, and I don't know if it comes up at this point, but I know you guys do squad competitions. You guys break the team up and you compete. Was this instituted at AB Miller, or did this come at a later time?
That started at Burroughs High School.
Wow. Okay, so did that play into you kind of creating the culture that you wanted, the behavior systems?
So we as coaches always talk about, hey, we love the off season because that's when we get to mold our team. Well, what does that look like? Like I don't know how you can just go with a high school athlete into the weight room and just get them just to work because the season that's 9 months away, it's going to be coming up. Like, I don't know, as grown-ups, it's hard to see 9 months away. How do you expect a high school athlete? So you have to have that carrot. And so I think that, what's the season about? The season's all about competition. Being a starting football player on your team is all about competition, right? So there's just so many different levels of competing, right? There's so many different things that happen. And I think one of the best ways to do it is through squad competitions in the off season. And not only is it the competition, we need to have great chemistry on our team. And we need to develop the ability to work together towards a common goal. And I think we need to develop leaders. So I think when you implement the squad competitions in the off season, they just check so many boxes of just being able to do those things in smaller groups.
Yep.
At the Coaching Coordinator Network, we're connecting great coaches in the systems they use. One way we're doing that is through our smart clinics, and the RPO Symposium is available now on demand. If you're working to turn a program around, you need ideas that work and systems that can help take stress off your players. That is what makes the RPO game so valuable. It gives your players answers while putting pressure on the defense. The RPO Symposium gives you a chance to dig deep into that mode of attack with coaches from multiple levels of football who teach the reads, structure, and adjustments that make it work. You get 18 on-demand sessions and more than 18 hours of content headlined by Joe Moorhead and supported by 8 more coaches. Go get access now at coachingcoordinator.com or click the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the episode.
Coach, this is a cheap plug for an app I created, but we have this app called the Rise Metrics, and we do our draft and then we break them up into the squads. But this app has all these different categories, and you just award or deduct points based off the categories. And it shows how a squad is performing overall relative to others, and it shows a breakdown of the points that each player earns. And so for us, it's been such a tool to say, hey, son, like you're at negative 80 points in the competition right now. That means that character-wise, you're either getting negative emails, you're not turning your grade checks, you're absent without communicating, something like that. And we need to have a conversation with what kind of teammate you are. Just creates these teachable moments. And then conversely, you see a kid that is, PRing in his running, he's getting good grades, he's getting positive emails from his parents, and teachers, like those kids you just celebrate. And it's really created this very tangible approach to creating the culture that we want at Troy. And I know that you do that. And I love those posts of, whatever it is, squad, monsters wins the competition this week.
I love that idea of that app. I'll tell you what, I've talked to so many guys in the off season about things that I'm doing. And then they tell me, I have an app for that. And so I've learned how to do formulas on Google Docs and Excel files and things like that. And there's probably an easier way. And it sounds like there is with the apps.
Yeah. So Coach, let's get to this. This is a great one. And I think you've probably mastered it a little bit at Beaumont, but with the community, how did you involve the community and create a fan base in the rebuilding process? Because I can imagine you as a type of coach that, if you're building your program, I know obviously, fans are a byproduct, but I also feel like you're intentional with everything. And I wonder if you have some intentions to building the fan base while you're out of school.
Again, I try to create a football program that everybody would be proud of to either belong to or support. That's just part of our overall vision. And I think that Friday nights is probably the most incredible way to put your school on display. There's nothing that comes close. And I'm not downgrading any other sport because they're all great. But football, just because of the nature of it, you have the ability to get a lot of people out to your games and a lot of groups to take part. So we've got drumline, we've got marching band, we've got cheer, we've got song leaders, dance team at halftime. ASB is involved in, getting students in the student section now. And I think that when you're inclusive like that and you make it about not just football's part of it, and I know it's a big part of it, so it's important for your football team to do well. But when you make the Friday nights about everybody, I think that now, like, you've got people, they come to the football game to see their daughters cheer. You've got the band parents. You've got the band parents that they're coming to the football game, but halftime's very important to them, and the pregame is really important to them when they're marching. And so I feel like this is just a great opportunity to sell what an incredible school we have, an incredible school culture, because not everybody has that. And it really makes me proud to say that, you know what, we're part of creating this atmosphere on Friday night. So I think that it's important that the band is able to get on the field at some point during the week and practice. I've got no problem when, we're practicing and cheers doing their thing and they're off on the side on the track and they have a big area and their music's going too. I think those are all just great things. And it's crazy when you hear about people not getting along or groups not getting along at school when it's the football coach and somebody else, especially these other groups that are super supportive on a Friday night and only add to all the things of being, all the things that would be great about attending a football game.
That is so convicting, Coach. When you just said that, it makes me kind of really reflect on my experience when you say, football is not the thing. It's only part of the whole process. And I definitely have got lost in that. I feel like we built a successful program, but maybe, and we do have, solid fan base, but nothing like really crazy. And I wonder if it's the mistake of, it's not about me. Like, it's not about the football program. It's about everybody participating in this. And so that's convicting. I love that, Coach. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
All right, Coach. So we have a very successful stint at AB Miller. And then this massive challenge comes up with moving to Corona Santiago. Obviously, amazing community, amazing school, amazing athletic support, brand new. We'll talk about the crash that happened around that time, which influenced some of your decisions, but also, you're playing in the best public school in Southern California at the time with Corona Centennial. Tell us about that process. How was that? And what was the turnaround experience like there?
Loved it. And it was just a great league, just terrific teams, terrific coaches. Obviously, Centennial being at the top there. In terms of not so much a turnaround in terms of wins, because Steve Mitchell, who was the head coach prior, had done an incredible job, and they actually played Centennial in a CIF championship, I think, a few years before I got there. But Steve was, I don't want to use the word burnt out, but I think that he felt at that time he's transitioning out of coaching and, he's now the athletic director there, has done an unbelievable job. When I got there, realizing, okay, what do we have to do? Where can we build this program? And what are the challenges? Well, I was faced with the challenge my first week when I got there when, custodian asked me, we going to beat Centennial? We're going to beat Centennial. And then the next day, another person asked me. And so people were excited, but I felt like before we even focus on beating Centennial, we just needed to improve in some certain areas in the program. Unfortunately, we never were able to beat that monster down the street, but I felt like we did a lot of good things in terms of getting players out, getting them, to 4-year schools and stuff like that every year. And I was pretty proud of that program. I wish that, obviously in the end, it was just, I thought when I took that job, I'm like, honey, we are moving to Corona. What a beautiful community. The housing market crashes. I'm on the freeways for 6 years. And the kids, I'm missing bedtime and stuff like that. And it was, in the end, it broke me that last year. We had gone, played in the playoffs, felt really burned out in terms of the travel part. And then winter break comes. Blake Barnett had just finished his senior year for us. I had an opportunity to coach in the Under Armour game that winter during winter break, New Year's, and I felt really recharged coming back. First week going back in the off season, there's a car crash on the freeway, and it took me 2.5 hours to get to work. And I'm like, I can't do this. And then around that time, Pete Duffy, who is the head coach at Rancho Verde, told me he was going to be stepping down and told me to put in for the job, which I did and was able to wind up there. Just great place to be.
Coach, let's sit on that. So, two things that I want to highlight there. Number one, what is the thing you are most proud of in that stint that you had at Corona Santiago?
I felt like just being able to be a playoff contender, being able to be one of the top 3 teams consistently in league, and just continuing with the success that Steve Mitchell had in terms of turning athletes out, going to 4-year schools, and just being able to. We had kids that went FBS, FCS, kids that were going to NAIA. We had some kids go to D3 schools every year, and I felt like it was just very consistent in terms of the players that we were putting out. And we had great kids that were just very academic kids as well, going to academic schools, and just really proud of the stability in the program that we had.
I think it's critical to highlight two things because I remember the other one. Number one, for our listeners that are nationwide, when we're talking about Corona, California, we're talking about the brutal, monstrous 91 freeway and the 15 where traffic is kind of unreal. Like if a listener was to pull up Google Maps at like 3:30 on a Thursday or Friday and look at that traffic, it's god awful. So when Coach said the traffic is bad, it's terrible. Second thing that I want to highlight is I think as a man of integrity, I can see you in that situation that's extremely challenging, just in regards to the level of competition. You ran your program, and as a result, you turned out the same results. Although you weren't getting them, like you said, on the scoreboard, you were still winning in so many areas. And turnarounds, sometimes we don't get to experience those, 14-0 seasons, those 13-1s. It may be a 6-6, but there's so much good that's happening in that 6-6 and or 7-5 or whatever it may be. And I just applaud you for that.
I felt like I think in the 6 years I was there, we made the playoffs 5 years. I think we had 2 quarterfinal appearances. So, those are a lot of things, and just like great kids, some of who I still keep and terrific families that like not just keeping in contact with some of the players that played, but keeping in contact with some of their parents still. And so, to me, those are a lot of things.
Absolutely. All right, Coach. So we then head to Rancho Verde. You take over this program, and from my understanding, it was pretty successful at that time, correct?
Correct.
So you said something on the phone to me, and you said when taking over a program, it's imperative to analyze how are you going to make this thing better, and you take over this great program and you still were able to find margins where you could change it. And not that it was necessarily better per se, but different, or maybe, leveraging things in your advantage. Tell us about what you were able to do there and how you were able to take a strong program and elevate it in your way.
So I knew some of the challenges were going to be just, again, back to academics and just, I think, improving the overall, so academics. And then the other thing was I knew Orange Vista was going to be opening up, which was a school that was going to be fairly close to us. So it would take away some of the athletes that were coming to our school from that area because the district would be rezoned because of Orange Vista. I believe Orange Vista opened up my second year there. And so that was part of the challenge as well. And then just the challenge of, that a program's been successful. How can you ensure that we're going to kind of continue that success while at the same time CIF is changing their playoff structure? The year that I got there is when they went to, just different divisions and not being in the divisions that they were in the past, based on, I think at the time, CIF did the divisions based on how you did the previous couple of years. And so I knew those were going to be challenges as well. So maybe not having the same pool of athletes, making sure that we were doing well in the classroom and just going to this new playoff.
Yeah, Coach. And I want to spend time there, but I think there's a lot of treasure to trove in the Beaumont experience. And let's quickly transition there. You just won a CF championship at Rancho Verde. Amazing. Then, a really kind of I guess, just it displays your growth mindset. You go to a program that, is not a CIF contender, and you take over that program and you have this vision of what it can become, and you take on that challenge. I remember your early days there. And I remember you kind of building it and building it and building it. And then, like, most recently, seeing you guys in Division 2, I'm like, what the heck did Coach do there? And so speak to our audience about maybe the gold in opportunities and how you took a chance and went to this place, and then how and what it feels like to have that pay off now, with you building this program into something special. Go ahead and speak to that, Coach.
I think I was able to have credibility when I came in just because of past success throughout my career. We didn't have really resistance from any of the players. There had been a situation the year before I was there where they had to remove a coach. So there's a little bit of instability from the year before, but I felt like we were able to solidify that and get the support from the parents and the community pretty quick. We had player buy-in. One of my very first things in order with our staff was I had told them that given the year before the way things went, we need to make sure that the seniors have the most incredible season they've ever had. And so I said, we have to pour into the seniors and make this last year of football fun for everybody and great for everybody, but especially the seniors because of the way their junior year was. And so when I took the job, I met with every returning player. I had a 5-10 minute interview with them to sell myself and to kind of talk to them about like what did they like about the program? What did they see maybe as some of the roadblocks or whatever? I wanted them to feel like they were heard. And it was just great way to get to know every kid in the program. And so that was number one. I never really thought in terms of you're in a division because that's where you are. So take care of business. And so I just wanted to make it just a great experience. And so just hiring the staff goes back to, the three things that I look for in a coach. And most of our guys have been there for the 8 years that I've been there, going on year 9 now. Again, just none of the basics of my overall philosophy have changed. They're all the same things that I've believed in from Burroughs High School to A.B. Miller and so on. It's all about just, setting the bar high and challenging the players to be better than they are and seeing something in them that they may not see in themselves. Now, obviously, society's changed like in the last 5 to 10 years. Like forget about from 1998 or 2005. It's changed from 2018 to 2020 to now. And so you have more challenges or different challenges now than maybe you did a few years ago. And then, one of the other things that I tell coaches, and I hope I'm not going off on a tangent, but every school has their own unique challenges. Coach Logan at Centennial, he has his own challenges that he has to deal with. Just because you're successful doesn't mean you're void of challenges. Probably when you're successful, you probably even have more challenges that you have to deal with than, a school that isn't. It's just we don't know, and you don't know until you get there. So every school has challenges that are unique to them, and as coaches, it's our job to solve those challenges and help the players and the program and the school work through them.
Coach, you had said something to me, and I don't want to take it out of context or missay it, but essentially it was kind of this idea that maybe some of your players and maybe some of your coaches had felt like, man, like we just, have not done good enough. And I think you had said something along the lines of, guys, look around. Like we just ascended faster than any program in the last few years from Division 10 when you got there, Division 2.
The last few years, we have struggled getting out of the first round.
Yeah.
And just putting it into into context, when we first started, I think our first year we played in the Division 11 semifinals. We played against Western High School, who's a pretty good football program too, and they've had a pretty good rise.
Yep.
We were literally one play away from playing in the championship game in that semifinal. One play away. And so from there we went, I think, Division 7, 5, 3, and then the last 2 years too. And, I told the coaches, like, look at what we've done with our players in our program. We've gone in 8 years from Division 11 to here we are now in Division 2 and the coach, for whatever reason, whoever thinks that we're a Division 2 program, like, this is terrific. Like, our players get to play against some of the best football players and the best football programs, not in California, but in the country. Like, you look at Division 2. I believe Division 2 was the most competitive division in Southern California.
Agreed.
The most competitive from top to bottom when you looked at all the teams that were there. And it's great to, you want to play at the highest level you can. And we're playing at a level that has terrific coaches. You got to scheme things up. You've got to be on top of things. Your players have to be on top. And I think it's something to be very proud of.
I couldn't agree more, Coach. And can you speak to maybe our last thing that we highlight here, Has it been a process for you to, I guess, navigate or demand or, get the players in the program used to the fact that this is who you are? So kind of embrace it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I think that like one of the big things is to ignore the noise. Like, don't worry about things that you cannot control. Focus on the things that we have direct control over, especially in this day and age, it really is harder, right? Like social media makes it very hard to ignore the noise because what happens is we start scrolling and looking at things and you get caught up in it. And then you have to stop yourself and go, oh, like none of this has anything to do with me. Why am I looking at, this stuff? And I think that sometimes because of social media and especially playing in a higher division, there is a lot of meaningless noise, right? About recruiting, about who gets offered. And so many of it's fake nowadays anyways, right? Like about who the top teams are. And like none of that matters because most of it comes from publications that aren't even real publications, right? And so I really do. It's annoying at times, but I really do enjoy that challenge of trying to teach people to focus on the things that they can control and just, like we'll probably wind up being I always tell the players, like, expect to be somewhere in between Division 2 and 4 in most years. That's kind of probably where we're going to be given the teams that we're playing and how we do. And just keep your nose down and just worry about stacking days and being the best that you can be.
I love that, Coach. That's so much wisdom right there, especially the thief of comparison, and I love that. Coach, provide one word of advice you would want to give to a coach that's taking over a program. He wants to turn it around. What is one piece of advice you would give?
This is a little cliche from Frosty Westering, who most young coaches won't even know who he is. Go read his book, Make the Big Time Where You Are. Okay, I read that my third year at Burroughs High School. And I think that it's just so important of like, make your program, see your program as the best. See your program as big time. Don't look for big time isn't somewhere else. It's where you are. So I always felt like I'm going to make this the best program for the players. I'm going to try to get them the best equipment that they can have, the best uniforms. I'm going to make Friday night the best experience. I'm going to make sure that we have the best off-season program. Our coaches are going to be on top of things. And I think that it's really important, like, to live that way. Like, and so, social media, again, like there's bad things about it, but there's good things. It gives me a great chance to showcase and highlight and brag about the kids in our program. And when you do that, what is that? That forces you just to kind of keep your head down and go to work rather than worrying about everything else.
Man, that is awesome, Coach. And listeners, I'm pleading. I have been trying to look for that book. I look online, there's no one that's selling it. I look on Amazon, I think it's like, I don't know, it's like $100 now because it's like gold.
Wow.
I know. So if anybody has a way for me to get that book, please reach out. I really want to put my hands on that because I've heard so many great things about that. And I know that that's a huge struggle for me personally, is always looking at what others are doing. And I want to make sure that I'm locked into my dudes and my program to be able to support them. So Coach, I am so grateful for the conversation. And listeners, I hope you hear my appreciation in this and how grateful I am to Coach Steinberg for giving his time up and sharing his wisdom with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Coach.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Turnaround Series presented by the Coach and Coordinator Network. At the Coach and Coordinator Network, we're committed to connecting you with coaches, systems, and ideas that help you build your program the right way. If this episode hit for you, take the next step. Dive into the platforms we mentioned today and continue learning from coaches who have been through it and built it. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. We'll keep bringing you real conversations and real solutions for coaches working to turn programs around. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.